What we don't know about is what is the security threat around ChatGPT, right? Just imagine, and I'll give a case. I'll give a case in point over here. You're actually generating a code through ChatGPT, right? What do you know about that code, right? That code must be having some malware. You can actually create a malware through ChatGPT, is what I've heard as well.
Right.
So when you are having this kind of an environment, when you have your developers go generate codes through ChatGPT and deploy in your environment, you're actually, almost taking your own view. You should not right now allow that to happen in your environment.
So, hey, Vispi, welcome to the Cyber Express. Amazing to talk to you. Of course, Teleperformance is known in several verticals. We have presence across multiple domains. But again, coming from us, because we are a cybersecurity domain, we want to understand a little bit about the kind of infrastructure that you have in place for the protection of data of your client. So let's probably begin with that.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me here on the interview. And I have been in this industry, especially the BPO BPM industry, for over 23 years now. And one of the important things that this industry needs to, first of all, understand from a cyber perspective, that our threat is not limited to a particular vertical, right? So when you talk about BFSI, you talk about healthcare, you talk about travel, you talk about IT, all these kind of verticals, gaming now, which is quite a big vertical that we work on, and they are all exposed to teleperformance or industry or the companies which work in the similar industry. So for us, the span of controlling cybersecurity is much larger and just not limited to a particular industry, because we serve almost every single industry. Right. Obviously, teleperformance is in over 80 countries now, over 470,000 people. So you can imagine the scale and the size that the organization is, with the multiple industry verticals that we have to go through. And that kind of makes our cybersecurity practice extremely critical, not just for us, but also for our customers, because we do not want one industry issue actually spilling over into another industry issue. So for that, what we do is, within Teleperformance, first of all, security is something which is a complete non-compromise discussion that we have within the company, right? We spend a lot on cyber, a lot. And when I say a lot, every year, our expense percentage-wise keeps on increasing amount of investment that we do for the cyber controls within the organization. It is needless to say, we've got a large team managing that. Obviously, we go with the latest security stacks, like the next gen firewalls, to EDRs, to threat intel, to cloud SIEM. Everything that people access within Teleperformance is always going through multi-factor authentication, not just along with multi-factor authentication for our end users, but even for our privileged users. All accesses are actually done only through hard tokens, for example. So you are actually creating that physical layer of security as well, that we provide, or we both, access our environment through the physical hard tokens as well. And then this is something where, the Teleperformance, we have unmatched data security and fraud prevention. We constantly adapt to technology. So we cannot say what we have deployed yesterday is fine for today, or what we are deploying today is actually fine for tomorrow. We have to constantly evaluate what is happening in the industry. And that's why we also strongly work with the threat intel team, which actually works within the dark web to make sure that anything, any news, anything around Teleperformance is not actually open in the market. At the same time, we don't want to wait for a threat to come to us, which is why we also have invested in the last few years with a very strong red team. So we do have our own ethical hackers working for us, who are constantly trying to reach into our environment, which is right. So that if something like that happens, it gives us that early warning. Because as we know, any attack that happens, it doesn't happen overnight. The threat actors actually come in, they sit dormant, they take time by the time they attack. But if we are able to crack into that, just like a threat actor would, which will give us the early warnings of any vulnerabilities that we are open with. So that's the approach we take within Teleperformance to answer your question.
Got it. So, I mean, you have your own company, or you have your own services, you have service line on that, or basically you hired an external vendor for this particular thing?
When we started initially, we did have some of these third-party vendors who were providing it as a service. Then, obviously, as the organization became larger and we started getting more and more familiar with the practices, we started having this in-house where we were only taking, services like people from those companies. But now, starting last year, everything is now in-house. So it is the in-house SOC which is actually run. In fact, we are also now consolidated that. So we have two SOCs, one that runs in India and Mumbai, actually the office that I sit in, and the other one runs in Greece. So we are also trying to make sure that we are having the 24/7 support from a SOC perspective globally.
Wow, that's amazing. Great. Okay, coming to Teleperformance approach towards data privacy and protection. How are that met?
See, one good thing about is when you're providing services to the customers, and especially you can imagine we have more than 800 customers across the globe, and hundreds of Fortune 500 companies work with us. For us, we are constantly audited from their perspective as well. So TP privacy management system is in place. Okay. At the same time, we also have all our delivery centers, which are ISO 27001 certified. Obviously, we have GDPR certification. We are, in fact, one of the first companies within India to actually have the BCR, which is the binding corporate rules. We are also working on that front so that even any data which is transferred within Teleperformance. So for Teleperformance, UK data is coming to Teleperformance India or vice versa. There is a method on how that data can also move. Forget alone client data. We are talking about our own data. So the TP complies to all applicable global privacy regulations, right? Now, one thing is complying to the regulation, right? We get audited. We obviously clear all our audits. But at the same time, we also need to be mindful about how the data is treated by the end user, correct? Because when you have more than 470,000 people working across the globe, of course, you have all the cyber awareness. We have all the trainings that we go through, which are annual trainings, quarterly trainings for every single employee on how they should control their data. But we also have our own tools. I'll name one, which is TP Protect. What this does is actually sits like an agent on every single endpoint. And this has the intelligence, the AI intelligence built into it, where we configure the rules as to exactly what each individual needs to do with the data or what application. And even if I jump from that same application from one tab to the other, which I'm not supposed to, but my customer has given me access, right? Because I can't control my customer access. Even if I jump from one tab to the other, we get the alerts in the SOC, where the rules are set saying Vispi does not need to do, he needs to do these 5 steps. If I do the 6th step, there is an alert in the SOC on the endpoint. So that's, again, these kind of tools are helping us immensely to control the data, the movement of data. Besides that, as I said, all the right compliance and certifications are already in place for Teleperformance.
Got it. As I said, okay. Coming to a very trending topic right now is ChatGPT. I think, and there is a lot of discussion around it, a lot of discussion around the feasibility of AI tools, and the cybersecurity concerns around it. So, what's your perspective?
Yeah. See, right now there is a lot of talk about going on ChatGPT, and everybody is saying it is one of the best tools and it is great and it just helps people do their work with a lot of ease and all the great stuff that we know about. What we don't know about is what is the security threat around ChatGPT, right? Just imagine, and I'll give a case in point over here. You're actually generating a code through ChatGPT, right? What do you know about that code, right? That code must be having some malware. You can actually create a malware through ChatGPT, is what I've heard as well. Right. So when you are having this kind of an environment, when you have your developers go generate codes through ChatGPT and deploy in your environment, you're actually, almost digging your own grave. You should not right now allow that to happen in your environment. Now, when we say that, uh, can we stop the latest generation developers to say, okay, go the old school way and we will not let you use ChatGPT and all that? Of course, that resistance will come from them, right? Saying that this is not the most efficient way to do it. So what we have started doing on that is, what controls are we trying to put if anything is being used through ChatGPT, right? So first of all, we are creating a separate environment, which is more like a test environment in which you can even do anything on ChatGPT, which is physically isolated. So you're not using that environment on your normal regular network, right? Because that is risk. You go on ChatGPT on your normal network, generate a code, deploy that code, and if it has a malware, you are in deep trouble. That is point one. But at the same time, not just for ChatGPT, you need to have an extremely strong VAPT team, the vulnerability assessment and the scanning. So our practice is so strong that anything that you are doing, even in a test environment, anything that moves to production or in your network, the change control will stop it. You have to go through a complete security review of that particular code, even if it is a single line. Go through that, and only then it can go into production. So you have to take the middle path. You can't just go and tell the user saying stop using ChatGPT. That won't work, but you'll have to continue to put those controls. It can also cause data privacy issues, because when users may land up putting in certain data into ChatGPT, right? You want to do some financial modeling, you may start putting companies financial data into ChatGPT, trying to do a financial modeling. So we need to, obviously, within Teleperformance, we started the awareness, saying it is not as straightforward as just keep putting in data in ChatGPT and get it, because these AI and ML tools, which are good to have, but they are good for good people and they are also very good for bad people, right?
Right.
Who can then actually misuse that. So I feel overall, globally, we don't know what the security policy of ChatGPT does, right? If you download ChatGPT, one of the disclaimers that it comes is that they are not responsible for any of the data privacy issues or any of that. So they're not taking any responsibility. So we have to control that.
Got it. So yeah, and address the last part of what you just said. Bad guys. There have been instances where script kiddies were using malware generated or malware code generated by ChatGPTs, and then using it to basically attack companies, and several of them even worked. So that became a very a concern globally, and then people have also, and then I think they went behind, OpenAI went behind, tried to patch things up, tried to train it again, but then people also found ways to bypass that. So this has become a very recurring problem in a very short span of time. So
Yeah.
what are your concerns around this particular thing of malware writers using this, more number of people who are not even into hacking are using these tools?
Absolutely. So it becomes very easy, right? So earlier, when you had to get into, say, you want to become a hacker or you want to create a malware, you have to be a tech geek, right? To even
True.
understand, because it used to be like,
True.
I don't even know how to do it. I mean, I would love to be a hacker, but I don't know how to, right? Versus you can use a chat GPT type of a platform and generally generate a malware and just try it out. So it is the responsibility from the OpenAI, those guys, to say how they are going to secure the same. But can we control that? No, because we've got no control over that organization. What we can control is what we can control, and that is where uh, we've almost blocked Chat GPT access from all our networks, so people don't directly start accessing Chat GPT in the environment. And for those people who really need to, I'm repeating this point, is that you give them a physically isolated network for them to use it, try it, anything that they're going to then deploy, uh, get it approved from our change management change board, which also includes the complete cyber board. Because otherwise, honestly, it's too dangerous right now for people to be all happy and start using it. It can really cause a very, very high security risk.
Right. Right. In fact, I think there was one other discussion that I had with Ross. I think he pointed out something called as a Wuhan of cybersecurity, where an artificial intelligence program, goes out of hand, infects computers, but it doesn't know how to stop. So, do you feel we are closer to a scenario like that, closer to a scenario of Skynet?
See, are the threat actors trying to achieve that? The answer is yes, right? And you can see with the situation of number of attacks that are constantly increasing. Airlines in US last year had a major outage. While they are saying it was not cyber, it was cyber. The fact is there was risk which was related to cyber, where I don't know if you know that almost for 5 hours the flights were not flying in the US,
Right, right.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So of course it is a cat and mouse kind of a situation. Are the attackers trying to go to that extent? The answer is they are preparing for it. Now it all depends upon how good the defense of every country, organization, the government, all of that are having for them to stop it. Given a choice, will that go into an extent where they would take such extreme steps? I think it would.
Okay, okay, okay. Can you talk, briefly talk to me a little bit about the collaborative effort that the Indian government, Indian government's Ministry of Information Technology is taking? Because
Yeah.
they have started with a program where they're doing cybersecurity training for government departments. So, how much of this collaboration do you think should involve private parties and other partners? Consider the fact that the knowledge of public servants and public or the governments in terms of cybersecurity is still not as advanced as a lot, probably their peers from private sector.
No, that's a very, very valid point, and I feel that the government, when it comes to cybersecurity, rather than trying to act like a governing body, they should actually partner with the private companies. The reason behind that is the stats say that, right? So if you talk about India, last year there were 82 attacks on government companies in India in 2022, which was 8 times higher than 2021. Okay, the attacks were not that bad on private companies. Does not mean that there are no attacks happening on private companies. It's just that the private companies are far more matured compared to the government companies, right? And that's the reason why the 8 times more attacks, 82 attacks on government bodies itself. So, so really, it rather than and it's not really strong, right? In India, the whole governance around cybersecurity is not that strong. Now, why are the private organizations so strong? Because obviously their bread and butter depends on that. TP needs to, if I take TP as an example, and if I'm going to work with the largest banks in the world, they're not going to give me business if I'm not even going to be, cyber secure, right? So they should actually partner and learn the best practices that the large private companies are actually following, the frameworks, the practices, the investments they've done. And when they partner together, in fact, that can be a better approach that the government can take. So definitely, this is not a topic where the government can work separately and the private companies can work separately. In fact, the government can take advantage of the private companies in this case.
Correct, correct. Nicely said. Added to that, I think one of the significant difference is I think I did speak to Lansco a couple of days ago, and the cultural in Singapore is very cyber secure. So, and that's not the case in India. So, from that perspective, from a cultural perspective, from an awareness perspective, how can there be better understanding, even for smaller companies or bigger companies, on cyber threats, and how can the government and private companies equally partner to bring about a difference?
Yeah. See, the government is taking initiatives. It's not like it is not taking initiatives. The reason behind that is India as a country is completely moving the digital way, right? Again, when you talk about stats, UPI payments, all those kind of things, the cash transactions are dramatically reducing, and obviously the wire transfers are increasing on multiple platforms. And obviously, that is increasing the threat of individual frauds, like people being cheated for thousands of rupees or hundreds of thousands of rupees. And we see that the government is continuously doing a lot of awareness at that level, at an individual level. Then I think your next question was, how does small companies manage that, right? That was your question.
Right, right.
Now, see, what small companies, startups, all these people need to do is that they need to. A lot of times, cybersecurity is not a sales pitch, right? It's the back. It's like a plumbing in your house. You have to have it. No,
Right, right.
we need to differentiate ourselves to our customers, saying how good we are because we are keeping your data or your product with us, which is going to be secure. So what we have started doing is that cyber has become a differentiator compared to our competitors. Now, Teleperformance spends millions on cyber. Does it mean a small organization can spend millions? Obviously, the answer is no. But at the same time, you don't always need to have those tools to secure you, which are always sitting on the top quadrant of a Gartner kind of analysis, right? You can also explore. There are way too many small startups which are also starting up into the cyber field. So they will need to then start exploring those tools which can give you similar kind of security, which maybe a large tool can give at a much lower cost. So if you need tools like EDR, you don't always have to go to Sentinel or CrowdStrike. You will find startups which will be able to do a similar thing for you at a fraction of the cost. And that's what the small companies will need to continuously evaluate. You cannot say I will not do cyber because I have a small company, because you will be out of business if you are under an attack.
You did mention about security training, but then if the question is between privileged access management or security training, most of the time a CISO or a CIO picks up privileged access management. So why is that usually the case?
See, for two reasons, right? So one is obviously you need to do awareness, because people should not unknowingly fall prey to maybe a phishing attack or any such type of an attack. Now you can only so much you can do with awareness. I'm not saying awareness is not important; it's extremely important, and we take it very seriously. In TP, when a person joins, the first training they go through is cyber training. Only then they even are allowed to log in. Okay, so and that's a policy. The first 24 hours they have to go through a cyber awareness training. Only then their user ID is given to them. Otherwise, they are not even allowed to log in, and we track that. But but humans tend to make mistakes, right? So how do you really mistake proof that? And that is where what we are trying to say is, let us try to build platforms or tools in such a way that intentional or unintentional errors are actually taken away from the user. And that's why we go for the zero trust networks. That's why we try to say that make the end terminal that the user is sitting with, whether he's sitting at home, whether it's a BYOD device, whether he's sitting in the office, he could be sitting in cyber cafe, doesn't matter where he's sitting and working from, that endpoint has to become a complete dumb terminal. Attacker can probably have access to that end terminal even through admin privileges, but they can still not do anything to our environment. How do you design that kind of a zero trust environment? Of course, users, you will give them policy based access, you will give them only rule based access, so on and so forth. But even after my endpoint is compromised, my network should not be compromised. And those are the kind of security controls that we have put in, where we are not worried about the endpoint at all. Endpoint for us is just a keyboard and a screen.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Probably this is one of the last questions. So what are the threats that you foresee? You probably your predictions for the next couple of years. What kind of threat actors do you think will be more active?
See, for the next more years that are going to come, I think the entry to the attack till now always was an endpoint. Okay, typically, right? An endpoint was compromised, and then that endpoint was actually entered into the environment, and then they start obviously compromising your environment. I think globally people are becoming more and more secure on the endpoint, right? Even if you look at the Google platform, or whether you look at even the zero trust platforms that are coming, like for example, we've completely moved on VDI again, so those kind of things. So the approach will move away from the endpoints, and they will try to attack the network in a different way. What can potentially happen, potentially, we wish it doesn't, is that if a cloud gets compromised, for instance, and that can actually have a much larger risk to the end customers or the companies, etc. Because a lot of time a perception gets created that because you are on cloud, you're secure. It's not always like that, right? Because I'm on AWS, because I'm on Azure, so which the Amazon and Microsoft has taken care of our security. No, that's not the case. So that could be a change. Maybe that's my guess. And we need to make sure that while everything is moving on the cloud, like for example, Teleperformance, IT spend is 68% on cloud. So you can imagine everything for us is now moved on cloud. We are almost very few things which are on-prem. How secure are we making our cloud? Because that can be the another entry point from a cyber attack perspective, which we need to control. Endpoints are taken care of. Make sure your cloud is secure as well.
Great. Thanks, Vispi. So that's about it. Anything else? Any closing notes that you want to share?
No, I think appreciate your time, and all I can say is not just for TP, but for people who work in this industry, a lot of collaboration is required, and we do that as well in our CISO forums, in our CIO forums. If we feel anything is vulnerable, we share with our even if it is our competitor, because our competitor is fine, but you don't want to actually be prey to a cyber attack, right? It's not good for the industry. It's not good for your customers, our customers. So I think more and more collaboration between public-private sector, within private sectors on this particular subject is always very, very helpful and very welcome. And I look forward if anybody can connect with me on that. But thank you for your time, and
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Vispi. In fact, I like that point because I think collaborations among private parties is a problem. Whenever there's a conversation, people do talk about governments collaborating on how their bilateral relationships are, but then collaboration between companies always lose out on the competitive edge the other companies have. So that's a very, very wonderful thing that you have put it out there.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.